they were all running a different movie in their head about what multi-generational living was going to look like. So it started me thinking about movies actually, and then that led to me thinking about TV shows. There are these like different TV families that many of us are familiar with that kind of illustrate the different ways that you can do multi-generational living. Welcome to Home After 50. I'm Julie Ford, and this is a show about reimagining what life can look like in this next chapter. Here we explore home, family, reinvention, and the evolving ways that women after 50 are shaping lives that are meaningful, grounded, and true. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to Home After 50. If you're watching this instead of just listening to it, you might notice I have a little bit of a different setup in my office here today. That's because we are onboarding some new agents into my real estate group at Powerhouse inside my brokerage at eXp Realty. And my assistant is actually working on onboarding and helping them. And they are all using my Zoom and my computer right now. So I thought, gee, how am I going to record this podcast? So I thought, you know what? I'll try recording it on my phone. So you'll have to let me know if it's coming through okay. This week, I would love to talk with you about some issues that have been popping up on social media around multi-generational living. And I hope that you'll find this episode interesting because what I'm sharing here has been sparked by real conversations coming through to me in the comments over on social. And I think that they are very relatable if you're thinking about multi-generational living. So all week long over on my social media accounts, I've been talking about privacy in multi-generational living. And this was actually sparked by a message that I got from a viewer who is thinking about planning a multi-generational home with her husband and her in-laws. Everybody is on board and wants to create this multi-generational home. But in the planning phase, they figured out that there is a very different idea among the generations of what this multi-generational home is going to look like. What she discovered is that her mother-in-law imagines their multi-generational home is going to be just one family, single family home with everyone sharing everything except bedrooms. So same living room, same kitchen, same common spaces, and just separate bedrooms. And what the woman who wrote to me was thinking was that they would create a home that had separate living spaces and then some shared spaces. So this could look like an in-law suite, or it could look like an ADU. There's so many different ways to do that, but they were really coming up against a difference in how they were picturing how the multi-gen home was going to work. And I started thinking about this, and I started thinking, you know, it's so interesting. Like, they have very aligned goals in some aspects, but what was happening when they were visioning, when they're in the visioning stage of this planning process, is that they were all running a different movie in their head about what multi-generational living was going to look like. So it started me thinking about movies actually, and then that led to me thinking about TV shows. And I did a post, if you're following me over on Instagram and Facebook, I did a post where I was talking about how there are these like different TV families that many of us are familiar with that kind of illustrate the different ways that you can do multi-generational living. So first, I want to preface this by saying there are an unlimited number of ways that you can do multi-generational living, but I thought I'd come on here and share 4 of them that were very well illustrated by TV families that are probably in your memory or consciousness somewhere. So you're going to easily be able to picture the kinds of setups that I'm talking about. The first one is the one big house, everyone living all together. And this for me was, in my TV family mind, the Waltons. So if you're my age, you'll remember the Waltons. You'll remember Good Night, John Boy, Good Night, Mary Ellen. You'll remember everyone living in one big house as one big happy family. So this is what this woman's mother-in-law was picturing when she was imagining what their multi-generational home was going to look like. That could work for some people. You know, for some families that might work absolutely fine. That's not the setup that we have in our home. You've heard me talk about it before. My mom has a fully private apartment in our home, and that's been a wonderful setup for us. I would say 90% of the families that I hear from and talk to about their multi-generational living situation or planning do not have that situation, nor do they want that situation. I think it takes some exceptionally close family relationships, some extremely good boundaries, and some real willingness to compromise on space and privacy for that situation to work. I'm not saying it can't. I actually think it's beautiful if it can, but most of the families that I talk to are not aiming for that to be their situation. The next kind of setup is a little bit more like what I have here with my mom, with a completely fully separate apartment attached to the house. And this I was relating to the Cunninghams. If you, again, are my age, you'll remember. This is happy days, right? Fonzie lived, he was not a member of the family, but he practically became one. Fonzie lived in an apartment, I think it was over the garage. And he would, come down for pot roast occasionally. But this is a setup that really allows for a lot of privacy, but a lot of closeness. So you can share a lot of expenses, but still have good boundaries and privacy, but be there for each other when you need to and when you want to, but with a lot of separation for personal time. And this honestly is the setup that I see most people do, either this version of it or a version of it where there is like a separate outbuilding, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the next TV family is the Duttons. Now, you'd probably have to be a more current TV watcher to be familiar with the Duttons. This is the Yellowstone family. This is Kevin Costner's Yellowstone family, lived on a huge ranch in Montana where they had the big house, and then they have separate bunkhouses. And I couldn't even keep track of how many houses were on that property. But this is the family compound idea. Like, a lot of people love this idea of a family compound where you have a shared piece of land, you have some shared expenses, you have closeness, but you have a tremendous amount of privacy and independence. I can't tell you how many people are dreaming of this situation, because it is kind of the best of all worlds, but not everyone can afford it and not everyone can make it happen. It does depend on you having the right land for it, you living in a place that would allow for the kind of building that you want to do. But I'll give you a for instance. I was talking to a woman who was on our multi-gen finance workshop a couple of weeks ago, and we had a private meeting afterwards about her plans, and she is pulling together I think it's about 7 different individual family members from different parts of her family. There's a mother, there's a mother-in-law, there's an aunt, there's a couple of cousins, and they are looking at buying a common piece of land and building what they want on it. And I personally love her dream. I am so excited to see her make it happen. It will probably take a few years. She's thinking really thoughtfully about shared resources and private space. So what her dream is to create, to buy the one piece of land, to create small individual homes for each of the families, and then to have some shared common spaces that are the places that you come together to watch movies or play ping pong or even cook meals together and share meals in one big common space. She was even talking about them having their own sort of like little family general store where people contribute a certain amount and then they stock the freezer with maybe local meats and produce and dry goods and things, and every family makes a contribution to it, and then every family can come and shop in the common family store. I thought this was a beautiful, beautiful idea. So if you're thinking of something like this, I would love to hear from you. If you've done something like this, I would absolutely love to hear from you as well. So this is what I'm affectionately naming the Duttons version of multi-generational living. And it's really the dream for many, many families. Last one for now, the Barones. Now, you may remember Everybody Loves Raymond with some kind of affection and perhaps a little bit of horror at the lack of boundaries between the in-laws on that show. But actually, it's a funny illustration of another way that families are doing multi-generational living. And I've seen this popping up a lot lately, where they're buying homes on the same street. So they're really close to each other, but they have completely independent home ownership. They can just come across the street, like Marie Barone did all the time, but hopefully with better boundaries, and be close to one another, maintain those relationships and that support, but be completely separate independently financially. Now, What I don't love about that is that it really doesn't leverage the financial benefits of multi-generational living in the way that a lot of these other situations and setups can leverage, because you're still maintaining completely separate expenses, but you are reducing the separation, you're reducing travel time to see and support one another, and you may also be still reducing like care costs, maybe childcare or elder care. So there are definitely a lot of benefits, but financially it's not my favorite of the setup. So if that's something that your family does, I'd also love to hear from you about that. So as I'm planning out future episodes of the Home After 50 podcast, I would love to hear from you about what you would like more information about, more stories about, more examples of. What I'm finding, I'm hearing most from people is that the number one thing they want support around with planning for and executing their multi-generational living plans is the finances, is the money, the conversations about money, the planning about money, the financing possibilities, the ways that all sorts of families are making this work financially. And then the other issue that comes up a lot is privacy, because this is real, right? If we've been living separately for a long time, combining households brings up issues of privacy that we may have never needed to think about before. Some families navigate this really well, kind of naturally, but for some other families, many of them, and this is no judgment, it's just a little bit more challenging if we, like the family that I gave the example of at the very beginning of this, have a different movie playing in our head of what multi-generational living is going to look like. It's just important that we communicate our movie and listen to what the movie is that our future housemates are going to be playing in their heads, and talk about that and try to get the movie on the same script. All right, I hope this episode was helpful. Just a quick chat about the different kinds of multi-gen living setups that I'm seeing, that I know that people are thinking about, and I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you'll share with me what your plans are. Please always feel free to send me an email, julie@julieford.com. Just remember there's no E on Julie. And I read all of your emails. I'd love to receive them. I'd love to hear from you, and reach out anytime. Let me know how I can help with your plans. Okay, see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of Home After 50. If this episode resonated with you, please make sure you're following and subscribing so you never miss a thing. And you can find more resources at my website, julieford.com. See you next time.